Hey guys, so the first thing we're going to review is the circumference and area of a circle. So remember that circumference equals pi times diameter. Diameter is this long green line here, so it's the length across the entire circle going through the center. Remember pi is either 3.14 or 22/7, so all you have to do is multiply 3.14 times d to find the circumference, which is the distance around the circle. You could also do 2 times pi times r, so circumference equals 2 times pi times r. So that's 2 times 3.14 times the radius to get the distance of the circle. So you can choose which formula you want to use. For area of a circle, remember that's the inside part of the circle. That's going to be found using the formula pi times the radius squared, or pi r squared. So all you have to do is find what this half line is, the radius, square it, which means multiply it by itself, and then multiply times pi, which is 3.14 or 22/7. For the angles of polygons, remember that when you have a triangle, all the angles add up to 180 degrees. But if you have a four-sided figure, like a square or rectangle, then all the four angles added up together will give you 360 degrees. Surface area is something that we learned about recently. Remember, when you have a rectangular prism, the surface area, or the areas of all the sides added together, is S equals 2LW plus 2LH plus 2WH. And then when you have a triangular prism, it's just the area of the bases plus the area of the lateral faces. So remember, another way to think about it is if you open up the shape, like let me give you the pyramid here, the net, when you open it up, is a square and 4 triangles. So you would find the area of the triangles and the squares and then add them up. If you were to draw the net of the cylinder, remember it's a rectangle with 2 circles. So you would find the area of the circles and the rectangle and add them up. So that surface area equals 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi rh. This blue part of the formula, remember, is the lateral. So write that down, lateral surface area. I'll abbreviate here. And that's basically the area of the part around the cylinder, so it doesn't include the tops and the bottoms. Okay, the next thing we're going to review is volume. Remember, volume is like if you have the shape and you fill it up with water, how much volume could it hold? So when you have a rectangular prism or a triangular prism, it doesn't matter what kind of prism it is, it's going to be volume equals the area of the base. So remember, the big B is the area of the base, right? And then times the height. For this one here, a lot of you guys actually like volume equals length times width times height, so you can add that on. Here for the triangular prism, you guys probably have seen length times width times height divided by 2. Okay? For the pyramid, you have the formula volume equals 1/3 area of the base times height. Then we have something called simple interest, which we learned a long time ago. I equals PRT. I is the interest. That's like if you were to put money in a bank, how much money does the bank pay you after a certain number of years, right? The P is the principal. That's usually your starting amount. Okay, so let's write that down. Principal. So that's your starting amount. Like if you borrowed $5,000 or you put $5,000 in the bank, then that's what your P would be. Okay? Your R is your rate. So that's usually the percent, but you have to change it into a decimal before you put in the formula. And then T is time in years. It must be in years. So if you're talking about 6 months, for example, that would be half a year, or 0.5 when you put it in. Okay, so you would use I equals PRT when you have any problems that involve simple interest. Finally, remember these rules? What's a negative times a negative? That is a positive. What's a negative divided by a negative? That is a positive. What's a negative times a positive? That's a negative. And what's a negative divided by a positive? That's a negative. So if you want, you can add sleepy man to help you remember whatever you are doing. So like if you're doing the positive times the negative, you cover those two up and you're left with the negative. That tells you the sign of your second answer. If you're doing a negative times a negative, you cover those two up, you're left with a positive, which would be the sign of your answer.